Hi everyone, welcome back to CSharpCorner live show. I'm your host Stephen Simon, and I am back with another episode of Ask Me Anything show. And this episode, I'm really excited. We have a really exciting guest coming up today. We're going to talk about lot of cloud and security. Before we go ahead and do that, if you are someone who are joining us for the very first time, I say we stream at CSharpCorner like 8 days in a week. We do multi streams in a day and almost like all these days. So quick reminder that this is the episode number 31 of Ask Me Anything. We have been doing many other shows. For instance, on Monday we have Azure AI show where we talk about the entire ecosystem of the and services that Azure has to provide in the AI and machine learning. Then on Tuesdays, I forgot to add the banner for Tuesdays. But on Tuesdays, we have Product Showcase and Coffee with Pros, where we do kind of video podcast, chit chat with tech geeks, talk about their life journey, and it's more like informal chit chat that we do. Then on Wednesday, we have CSharpCorner MVP show, where we feature one of the community leaders and talk about their journey in the field of community, and followed by technical session. The other day, we had actually this morning itself, we had Shweta from Seattle. She did talk about notification in Microsoft Graph. That video is available on C Sharp Corner. You can definitely go and watch this. Then on Thursdays, as it is today, okay, so this time it's gonna change, right? 7:30 p.m. I don't know, the daylight timings. As an Asian, for me, it's very challenging to keep up with the daylight change timing. They would just change sometime. So, but the fixed time is 10 a.m. Eastern. On every Thursday, we do Ask Me Anything show where we invite a guest to ask them literally anything, followed by a technical session too. So, one of my favorite shows. Then on Fridays, we have Growth Mindset, where that show is hosted by the founder, Maheshan, who talks about that you just don't have to keep on coding your entire life. You want to go ahead and involve in some managerial decisions, they be a leader. That's what that show is about. And another show on Saturday that we do is by David McCarter. Who is a 14 times Microsoft MVP. He invites people from the entire ecosystem of .NET. He has interviewed Matt Stodgerson, .NET director Scott Hunter, Kendra Heavens, and many more amazing folks in his show. Apart from that, we also have conferences that we do. And if you want to go ahead and stay updated with anything that's happening on C Sharp Corner Live, just visit csharp.live, a streaming destination, and you will find us streaming almost every day. Having said that, in today's episode of Ask Me Anything, we have Vijeta, who is a I'm gonna read her bio, right? I usually mess up with the bio, so I'm just gonna read her bio. She's a program manager and a technical evangelist, which means she would always go ahead and speak in many different events and conferences. She has experience in implementing strategies and training globally to provide a competitive edge to organizations in diverse, involving customer environments. Currently, she's working on her passion to demystify cloud technologies using web comics, animated videos by harnessing the power of storytelling and analogies. A storyteller and a technical enthusiast by heart, she want to use her experience to grow, give back to profession and community, and make technology accessible, fast, scalable, and reliable. I'm really excited to go ahead and host her. So, without any further ado, let me invite our guest, Vijeta. Hi, Vijeta. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing great. So, Vijita, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. We really appreciate your time for all that you do for the community, right? We really love that. So, thank you so much once again for accepting the invitation. I did read your bio, though. It looks really amazing. But would you like to just go ahead and do, as a format of the show, a quick introduction of you so that people watching this can kind of get who you are, what you do?
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm Vijeta. Like you just mentioned, I'm currently following my passion to demystify cloud computing and even emerging technologies for that matter, using the power of storytelling and analogies. So I'm the creator and writer of clouddemystified.com. And there actually I'm using storytelling and simple analogies, doodles to demystify cloud fundamentals, best practices, and just yeah, like I said, anything around cloud technologies. Apart from that, I'm also giving a lot of talk shows and presentations, academic presentations as well, just to follow my passion. So right now, and like I mean, people who have visited my website know already, I have a toddler, I have a 2-year-old at home, so creativity really provides me with the fuel to look after her. It's exhausting, so this is like yeah, so That is where I am at right now. And before this, I have worked as a program manager at Akamai Technologies. And that is where I got introduced to on-premise infrastructure. And because I was just at the center stage, I could realize how difficult it is to maintain that infrastructure, all the kinks associated with it. And that's where I started exploring cloud computing. And here I am right now. So that is my brief bio. Do you need anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I will go ahead and quickly chat about. You did tell that also the title of the session says that you are more into this cloud, right? And when I go ahead and check your blogs and your profile, it seems that you are more inclined towards Google Cloud, right? So
Right.
can you kind of we usually see AWS and Azure coming up. Usually people talk a lot about these. So what made you go ahead and move your career into Google Cloud? What was something that you liked? Was it that a project was coming up, so that's why you moved, or you kind of liked it? What's the background with that?
Yeah, so very simple background with that is I wanted to learn more about cloud computing. I went to
Hmm.
Coursera, and the first course that came up when I searched for cloud computing was Google. So, just long story short. And other than that, I started exploring it. So, I explored AWS, I explored GCP, I explored Azure. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but somewhere GCP stood out more to me. So, it spoke well to me. And also, I mean, since it was so new and innovative, it's still a niche market out there.
Yeah.
So, because of that, I realized that it has a lot of potential to grow. I mean, it's not perfect and it's not as widely adopted as AWS, to be frank, but
Hmm.
at the same time, yeah, I think it really spoke well to me, and all the AI capabilities it had, the flexible pricing model, just some things, yeah. But just long story short, I think it was just mere sheer luck that I found GCP as a first course for cloud
Yeah.
computing when I went to study. So
That sounds interesting that you went ahead to go learn in something and you found GCP, and you fell in love with it. I to be honest, I've not interviewed many people who come from the GCP background. So when you go ahead and get started, it will be pretty interesting to see what GCP has to offer and all that. Because
mhm.
I think it's backed, definitely it's backed by Google. So, and Google is an amazing company. So definitely they have an amazing product coming up. So now with Vijeta today, we're going to talk about cloud security demystified. So all the people who will be joining us for next 20-25 minutes and all that, what people should be actually expecting that we are going to cover in next 20-25 minutes?
Yeah, so I'm just going to scratch the surface of security. I'm not going to do a lot of deep dive into it. So this is
Hmm.
more of an introductory to an intermediate session. So I'm going to talk about what cloud security means, and I'm going to use a very creative approach to explain cloud security. And you'll see that once I start the presentation. And after that, yeah, I'm just going to talk about security threat model, security shared responsibilities, and then open the ground for question and answers. So, like I said, it's going to be very basic. I'm going to scratch the surface, but I'm going to do a little bit of deep dive in between as well. So, this is what we can expect.
I'm really excited, Vijay. I mean, you can see I'm really excited more on the technical part. I just visited your clouddemystified.com and I see some really amazing content that you have added over there. So I'm really excited for it. You can go ahead and pull your screen, share your screen, and then I'm going to pull that on the live stream, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stephen. I will do that. So, just want to know if my screen is visible.
Yeah, your screen is there, and I've added it to the stream.
Perfect. So, let me start. Yeah. So, I'm just going to start with a small presentation now and going to start with the process to demystify cloud security. So, since organizations host their infrastructure, applications, and data on the cloud, it is very important to secure them. Now, what is cloud security? Cloud security consists of technologies, processes, policies, and controls to secure applications on the cloud. No matter which service is provided by any of the public, private, or hybrid cloud providers, it is important to understand the security threats and design model to mitigate them. There can be security attacks from inside or outside the organization, and it is helpful to either have clear policies and processes in place to ensure safety. I'll talk a little bit about these threats and best practices to mitigate them as we go on. But before that, I want to tell you a story. I'm going to talk about the story of the three little pigs who are in the forest to start their own adventure. You may be wondering why I'm going to tell you a story, but you'll understand that once I start. So, the three little pigs decided to move out of their house into the big, bad forest filled with animals and predators. The first thing they needed to do was build their own houses. The first pig decided to build a house of straw. The second pig decided to build a house of clay. And the third pig decided to build a house of bricks. Now, it is important to remember this since the stability of these houses reflect on the strength of the security measures, the straw house being the weakest and the brick house being the strongest. The pigs went about, built their houses, they were having a nice time. So while the pigs were enjoying their freedom, a big bad wolf was spotted lurking around. The wolf was hungry, obviously, and just wanted to do some mischief. And this helped them. So the pigs were actively monitoring their surroundings and found the intruder. They realized that the big bad wolf can attack them anytime. This helped them get inside the houses on time and lock their doors. Remember, monitoring is extremely important when it comes to cloud security because it helps organizations prevent any unwanted attacks by strengthening the security measures. The big bad wolf approached the first pig and asked him to let him in. The wolf was an outsider and didn't have access to the house. Now, see, this process of giving proper access to organizations or groups is very important because it helps us decide who can access what data and prevents any unnecessary breaches or changes. This concept is called identity access management. This I'm going to explain in some time. So, since the wolf didn't get access to the house, he decided to try something else. He decided to blow it down. The wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew the entire house down. Now, unfortunately, the first pig left all of his goodies out in the open. He didn't secure them, because of which the wolf got access to all the goodies and he could walk outside with that. Now, what I told you right now is one important practice that the pig missed. It's the practice of encryption. The wolf stole all the goodies because the pig did not follow an important security based practice of encryption. What is encryption? Encryption simply means protecting the data in a secret code just to hide its true meaning from outsiders. The wolf was able to get in and steal all of that. Next, the wolf was still hungry. He decided to go to the next house and he went to the clay house, sorry, which was built by the second pig. The wolf asked the pig to let him in. And as usual, the second pig had also secured the house and the wolf did not get access to that. He huffed and he puffed and he blew the house down. Now, the only thing different here is the second pig thankfully had secured all of the belongings in a vault. Even though the wolf could get inside, he was not able to access the goodies and the belongings. He was dejected, and dejected, he went out. What the second pig did, different from the first pig, was to follow an important practice of encryption. He encrypted all the goodies or all the data into a vault and secured it. So even if the wolf was able to breach and get inside the system, he was not able to access the goodies. The wolf was still hungry. He went to the third pig. He asked the third pig to let him in. The third pig had also secured the house with a lock and did not let the wolf come inside. Again, all the three pigs, if you remember, follow the important practice of identity access management. They identified that the wolf was an outsider and they did not let the wolf come in. The wolf decided to use the same trick as he did with the first two pigs. He huffed and he puffed and he tried to blow the house down. He tried a couple of times, but if you remember, the third pig had built a house made out of bricks, and it's not simple to blow a house of bricks down. The wolf was dejected. He didn't know what to do. He started just roaming around and planning on some other alternative, and he realized that the chimney of the house was open. He went and he jumped inside the house through the chimney. What the wolf here did was he found a vulnerability in a very strong system. So the entire house was really strong. It was made of bricks, but then it had one vulnerability. It had an open chimney. The wolf went and he jumped inside the chimney to get access. This way, the wolf was able to get access. The third pig had to think on the feet and had to mitigate the security attack. The third pig went and he lit the fireplace on fire. Because he lit the fireplace on fire, there was smoke coming up the chimney, and the wolf realized it's impossible for him to get in. He ran away dejected. And with this story, all the three pigs and the wolf learned an important lesson. So, why did I tell you this story about the three little pigs? I did this just to explain the entire concept of cloud security. All the three pigs had three houses. Think of these three houses as three different applications that you want to host on the cloud. All these applications need to have a really strong foundation and all the security best practices that need to be followed. The wolf was able to get inside the first house because the structure was weak. However, he was unable to get access to the goodies. He managed to get inside the second house for the exact same reason, but because the goodies were secure, he was unable to access them. The third house had a really strong foundation. He was not able to get inside the house, but he found a vulnerability and tried to enter. The third pig just thought on his feet and he mitigated that attack by lighting the fireplace on fire. So, this is how the story goes. And now, why did I tell you this story? Because I wanted to use a popular story to remove cloud security out of the realm of abstraction and situate it in our day to day lives. So, did you learn anything with this story or did I just waste your time? You learned a lot. Let's see what you have learned. So, the three houses were in all in the public space, which is rendered open and vulnerable to the big bad wolf and all attacks from predators. Even though all the houses had a good system, somewhere in their own ways they were vulnerable. Since the first pig was actively monitoring the surroundings and had a straw house, a good lock on the straw house door, he was able to keep the wolf out. However, this house had very strong active monitoring and firewalls. The belongings inside were left open and not secure, and the pig didn't even try to test the strength of the house before. Just going by this, the first house had really strong monitoring and alerting system because the pig was monitoring outside and saw that the wolf was lurking by. The first house also had really strong firewalls, as in the wolf could not get inside or see inside, although the pig was able to see outside. So basically, it was a one-way communication, which was completely secure. However, what the first house lacked was a really strong security model. The house was made of sticks, so it was easy to blow it down. Very weak encryption. The goodies were left out in the open and vulnerable, and there was no vulnerability testing. The pig did not try to test the house before establishing it, just to make sure it was safe from any attacks from the wolf. Because of this reason, the wolf was able to get inside and steal all the goodies. Let's talk about the second house. The second house also had really strong monitoring and alerting because you saw that the second pig was monitoring and you saw the wolf lurking around. It had really strong encryption because the second pig had stored all the goodies inside a vault. So even though the wolf could get in, he was unable to access the goodies, and it had really strong firewalls. The pig was able to recognize that the wolf is an outsider and not let him in. However, just like the first house, it didn't have a vulnerability testing. The second pig did not test to make sure the house was stable, and it also had a very weak structure. It is easy to blow down clay houses. The third house was different than these two in that it had a really strong security model. The foundation was strong. It was made of bricks. So unless there was a cyclone or there was some natural calamity, it was not possible to blow it down with a mere huff and a puff by a wolf. It also had strong monitoring and alerting, encryption, as well as it had really strong firewalls. However, the wolf was able to get in just because of one vulnerability, the chimney. So the third pig should have done vulnerability testing to make sure that the structure was really rock solid and no one could get inside. So because of this vulnerability, the wolf was able to get inside. But as we say, the security mitigation is also a very important lesson when it comes to cloud security. The pig was able to mitigate the attack and there was no harm done to him or his friends or the goodies. So I'll just give you a moment to breathe this in and then we'll move on. Yeah, so organizations have to host their infrastructure on a shared space in the cloud, which is very similar to the houses you saw in the forest. This leaves it vulnerable to attacks by people inside as well as outside the organization. It is the shared responsibility of the cloud providers and the users of the organization to ensure security best practices and compliance with strong regulatory standards. Just because your house has a lock doesn't mean that it is safe from the big bad wolf. The wolf can also find other ways. He can blow the house down, he can get in through the chimney. Similarly, attackers can use active as well as passive means to get inside your system, and your data can get compromised. So, let me talk about the kind of attacks now, because it's important to understand and just think from the mindset of the attacker to understand what are the types of attacks that can happen, what is the threat model we have, and what we should do to make sure that doesn't happen. So, moving on. Broadly classified, there are two types of attacks which we can expect for the data on cloud. The first attack is called active attack. This is active or direct attack on the data after breaching or making use of any vulnerabilities. The very foundation of this attack is the method. So the intruder can get inside. Weak firewall rules, inconsistent IAM rules, IAM means identity access management rules, or other gaps in the structure can provide access to the intruders to get inside to get to your data. The next type of attack is passive attack. Using this method, the attacker manipulates the system and gets inside using passive aggressive means. So they lurk around, keep a watch, and just watch out for any slippages to get inside the data. This kind of attack is extremely dangerous since organizations can miss noticing the intruder, which may, for example, lead to big data breaches. I'll just give you an example. Someone can impersonate you when you're working for a company, pretend to be the employee of a company, and get access to the data. So this can create havoc because people might not even notice that someone else is there accessing the data. So, just to address any of these attacks, we need to have a really strong foundation. What do I mean by foundation? By this, I mean really strong policies, processes, and and designation of roles and responsibilities. Now, just think of this as the foundation of the house. If the foundation is strong, heavy rain, wind, or any other thing won't damage it that much. So, having a strong foundation is extremely important. So the second one we have is monitoring. We need to actively monitor any suspicious activities that is happening from outside. So this can prevent any attackers from manipulating the system. Think of this as a CCTV, which monitors suspicious people or activities on your property, just so you can take necessary action before any damage happens. I'll keep mentioning the word shared responsibility again and again, and I'm going to mention it once more. Security is the responsibility of both the cloud providers and the organizations. Having a very strong security system is really important because users need to be vigilant and monitor any suspicious activities which might compromise their data. Now, let's talk about a security model which was created by Microsoft, but it is used extensively in the industry right now to understand the types of attacks you can expect on cloud applications. This model is called the STRIDE model, where STRIDE is an acronym that stands for spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. The reason why I'm mentioning this threat model is because we need to think from the mind of an attacker. What kind of attacks can happen? Because once we do that, we'll be able to mitigate or even prevent those attacks from happening in the first place. Now, let's start with the first letter. What is spoofing? Spoofing just means using someone's identity or a false identity to gain access into the system. This attack is a violation of confidentiality since the attacker is using the identity of someone else to gain access to the data. For example, an attacker can use the identity of a company's employee and gain the credentials to gain access to some confidential data. That is why it is very important to have your username, system, or even your addresses identity secure, since anyone can misuse them by pretending to be you. Having a really strong password rotation, key management services, all of this is very important to prevent this kind of attack from happening. Now, the second letter is T, and T stands for tampering. Just as the words, what the word says, this means making unauthorized changes to the data, whether it is in transit or in storage. Simply put, it tampers with the data, active or stored, and it is a violation of integrity as well as availability. Using this, the attackers can make some important data unavailable to the users, causing system failures or even causing the entire system to crash. Having really strong policies and clearly defined roles can help prevent this kind of attack from happening. Organizations should provide authority to only a select few to make changes to the data. Otherwise, anyone can get inside, make changes to the data, and make them unavailable on a very important occasion for the users. For example, they can get inside a popular shopping website and make it unavailable during Thanksgiving. Now you can imagine the kind of losses that would, incur. Now, the next letter we have is R, where R stands for repudiation. This means the ability of the attacker to deny any activity or action to be performed. The attacker can gain unauthorized access and prevent an important action from taking place. This is a violation of confidentiality. For example, the attackers can stop users from going to the next page of a website or the next level of a popular game. What would this do? This would make the users lose trust in the website or the organization and also cause a lot of financial loss. This would cause a lot of inconvenience and also sometimes loss of revenue. Again, having clearly defined policies and processes can help mitigate this kind of attack. I'm going to move on to the next letter, which is I, where I stands for information disclosure. This simply means disclosing unauthorized information by the attacker. The attackers can gain access to confidential or private information and distribute them to others. This is a violation of confidentiality. For example, the attackers can gain access to a confidential document on the website and misuse it to compromise the security of the users. This attack stems from a weak access process, and the confidential information should have multiple layers of security to make sure it is secure. It is not just logging in and using, and accessing the data, but there needs to be either dual or multiple layers of security to make sure any confidential data or any confidential document is kept secure on the cloud. Every employee, internal or external, needs to go through a very solid authentication process, whether it is duo or multiple, in order to access confidential data. Now, the next letter we have is D. This is a very common attack which all of you might have heard at some point or the other, and it is called denial of service or DOS. So basically, this simply means overloading a website or application with a lot of traffic so it's not able to handle the load and which causes it to go down. This is a violation of availability. Hackers use bots or online robots to send a huge amount of connection requests or traffic, bringing down the entire system. Now, having a strong foundation, ability to monitor and prevent accesses to bots can help this attack from happening. So the CAPTCHA numbers or image selection you see while you're trying to access websites are just to make sure you're not a robot and you're actually a real person. This is a very common kind of attack, and like I said, having strong policies and processes is extremely important. The last letter which I'm going to talk about is E, where E stands for elevation of privilege. Just as the word means, it means that the attacker can give themselves more access than what was granted to them. For example, the manager might have given someone a viewer access, but they can change that access to editor just to make some unwanted changes. This is a violation of confidentiality, integrity, as well as availability. Having strong processes around access control and authentication is necessary to prevent this attack from happening. This is one of the most dangerous attacks since the attacker or the hacker has unlimited access to do any kind of damage they want because they can elevate their privilege to anything they want. They can be an owner as well. So this kind of attack is really dangerous. Now, since I've talked about all of these threats and attacks, it is very important to understand whose responsibility is it to ensure security. Is it the responsibility of the cloud provider? Is it the responsibility of the organization? In short, it's the responsibility of both of them. There's a shared security model which we need to follow in order to secure the applications on the cloud. I'll just move on. So, talking about shared responsibility, what I'm going to do right now is break this down into services. The first service is IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. The second is platform as a service, and the third is software as a service. This falls under cloud fundamentals, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but it basically means getting infrastructure services through the cloud. And the second one would be getting a platform to host your applications where you are responsible for your applications and the data. And software as a service just means getting a software where the people can go and write their own code. So all these three models are, these are the three basic models that cloud providers give. And I'm going to break this down into responsibility of people. By people, I mean people inside and outside the organization. Data, that is the data that is there in your applications on the cloud. Third is applications. So these can be applications that you're running on the cloud with. And the last one is the operating system. So operating system of the applications. Talking about the shared security responsibility. Each of these offerings have people, data, and application and operating systems, like I mentioned, which needs to be kept safe from attackers. The cloud providers and the users are equally responsible for ensuring the safety depending upon the services which they have chosen. Let's start with the security model for infrastructure as a service or IaaS offerings. Since IaaS are highly customizable in nature, the users are responsible for the software and the operating system configuration. The users of the organizations are responsible for ensuring the safety of people, data, applications, as well as the operating system. So basically, in whenever you take infrastructure as a service, since I'm well acquainted with a Google Cloud Platform, it can be compute engine. So as soon as you have that in place, you need to make sure that you have kept the people, data, applications, and operating system secure, and it is your responsibility. Just because it is so highly customizable in nature and not as managed as software as a service or platform as a service, it provides the organizations with flexibility as well as responsibility. So with responsibility, security is a very important concern. Now, let's move on to platform as a service or PaaS. This provides organizations with the hardware and the operating system, like I mentioned. So the operating system falls under the responsibility of the cloud providers, where they have to manage system patches, security policies, important security updates, and the organization is responsible for people, data, and applications. And like I mentioned, the operating system security falls under the cloud provider. This doesn't mean that you can just wash your hands of security measures. You have to stay on top of what is happening. It's just that the cloud provider is responsible for all the security patches and maintenance of the operating system. The third model we have is SaaS or software as a service. This provides organizations with the software and and hardware services, and the users just need to go inside and write their code or document. Because this is such a hands-off offering, cloud providers are responsible for ensuring the security of their applications as well as the operating system, and the organization is still in charge of people and data. So, talking about this, for software as a service, the organization is responsible for ensuring the safety of people, for the data on the cloud. That is, they need to make sure it is encrypted and it is safe even if a predator gets inside. So the organization is responsible for that. But as far as the application and operating system goes, the cloud provider is responsible for this. Now, it is important that under no circumstances can organizations wash their hands of security. They are responsible for ensuring the security of their applications, operating system, and overall they have to overlook whatever is happening on the cloud. So that's why I'm mentioning the word shared responsibility as well as active monitoring. The organizations cannot just take it for granted that the cloud provider is making sure the application and the operating system is safe and not watch out for monitoring services. They have to monitor whatever is happening. So remember, security is a shared responsibility of both the cloud providers and the organizations, which follows a mix of strong foundation and active monitoring, like I mentioned before. Just because you have a house or a brick house with a strong structure doesn't mean that it is safe from big bad wolves. You need to be careful and vigilant of your belongings, and it is important not to trust anyone inside or outside the organization, and keep policies and processes equal for everyone. You cannot have a different set of policies for people inside the organization and a different set of policies for people outside. Now, take a moment to digest this, and then I'll move on to security best practices using which you can ensure safety for your data on the cloud. So take a moment to digest this. Security best practices. We have almost moved to the end of the presentation. So the first one is identity access management or IAM, which I had mentioned before. Every internal and external user should only get access to the data they need access to on the cloud. You're already following this while sharing documents on Google Documents or Office 365, for example. You give editor access only to people who need to edit the document, right? This is called the privilege of principle of least privilege. You only give your access to people or groups who don't need to edit the data in your applications. This can ensure that no one tampers with the code. Going back to the three little pigs example, the three little pigs had policies which allowed their friends to come inside the house with a knock just because they had given them insider privilege. But the minute they saw the big bad wolf, they did not allow the wolf to come inside because they knew the wolf was an intruder. So, having clear policies around identity and access is important to secure your applications on the cloud. Next we have is active monitoring or keeping an eye out on any unwanted users or malicious activities. I have mentioned this a lot of times during the presentation. The good news here is that all cloud providers have free monitoring services using which you can prepare dashboards and see if anything seems out of place. So, why not make best use of that, right? This can ensure that proactive responses by ensuring hackers don't do any damage. Think of this like a CCTV outside your house. You're monitoring to make sure there's no malicious activity happening or no one is just trying to get inside your house. Next, we have data encryption. With this, the data is converted into a secret code that hides its true meaning. Have you ever encountered your password getting converted into some weird symbols after you type it in a box? That is because it gets encrypted. This way, attackers or hackers won't be able to understand a word of the data even if they somehow manage to get access to it. This is important because encryption needs to be for people inside as well as outside the organizations. You cannot compromise your users' data or people who trust you with their data by leaving it out in the open. Going back to the three little pigs example, this is like the goodies for the second pig and the third pig. They had secured it inside a wall, so even if the wolf got inside, he was unable to access it. Now, next, we have testing. This simply means attacking the code or the application from within to test its durability. A team of testers within an organization look for loopholes in the code or the user interface before attackers can gain access to them. This way, the organization can fix any vulnerabilities before an outsider can access them. This is what the three little pigs were missing. They did not test their own structure. They just took it for granted that it was safe because that is where how much their knowledge went. If they had someone to test the structure, the first pig would have realized that the straw house was so easy to blow down. Similarly, with the second pig and the third pig would have noticed that the chimney has easy access for intruders. So, testing never is very, very important. You should not undermine the value of testers and testing. Next, we have establishing and managing firewalls. So, firewall, like I mentioned, is nothing but a barrier attached to the system, avoiding any intruders from getting inside. This blocks any unauthorized access inside the system while allowing for outward communication. For example, Amazon lets you publish updates to their Amazon can publish updates to their shopping website and lets you shop, but you cannot get inside their system and make changes. So it is a one-way communication just to make sure that there's data going outward, but no one can get inside the system. So having really strong firewall rules are very important to secure your applications. Now, remember, all of these security best practices are to ensure your data is secure on the cloud. Having a zero trust model or simply not trusting anyone inside or outside the organization is very important, and it is necessary for ensuring a high level of security of your data. Anyone can impersonate an employee or gain access to the system, right? That is why it is important to do that. Have your policies and authentication same for everyone. Define policies well. Keep testing your code from within the organization and keep your data in an encrypted format. Now, I'll move on to the final slide and I'll give you a little brief about what we talked about now. In conclusion, cloud providers are either public, private, or hybrid in nature. They provide infrastructure, platform, or software as services, and security is the shared responsibility of the cloud provider and the organizations. Understanding the type of cloud provider you have chosen, as well as the type of service you have chosen, is very important to understand your shared security responsibility model. So we organizations as well as the cloud providers are responsible for ensuring safety, and it is necessary to establish a really robust security model before moving your data on the cloud. Security is also a very important part of moving your data on the cloud or cloud migration, and it is an ongoing responsibilities because we have new policies, new processes that come up. So staying in touch with all the regulatory and the compliance requirements, as well as the new best practices that crop up. Like this is not an exhaustive list. It can keep changing and new things can keep getting added to it. So that is a responsibility of everyone. So I'll do one thing. I'll just give you a moment to breathe and process all of this, and then I'll open the floor for questions. So, Stephen, if you want, we'll just open the ground for questions now.
Yeah, that was amazing session, Vijeta. I really enjoyed sitting back and listening to everything. You covered the entire ecosystem, starting about what cloud security is. You covered everything, encryption and all that. I really loved it, and I think it was very detailed session. Quickly, I wanted, so when you go ahead and added a slide that's had cloud service providers and IaaS PaaS application overlay, I could what I could actually feel is that in the IaaS it's more about the person. There's more responsibility on an individual and the organization, and as we move towards a pass, we are leaving some of the responsibilities on the cloud service provider. Okay, so a quick question here is, if someone wants to go ahead and think of a cloud security, which model should they opt? Should they go for as pass SaaS? What do you think should work best in any generic environment or situation?
I think it completely depends upon the kind of services the people need. So,
Hmm.
cloud providers, like I said, have all of these. So, if they, for example, have a developer who just wants to go in and write a code,
Hmm.
the SaaS application is best for them. They can just get inside and they can concentrate on their code without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure or even maintenance of that. Because security, maintenance, and all the other infrastructure needs are taken care of by the cloud provider. With that, of course, the security, a large part of the security is also covered by the cloud provider. However, if they want a more customizable model, like if they want to host their own website and they want to host their own operating system, I'll give a very simple example. If you want to go and create a PC game on Google Cloud Platform, you will take the IaaS offering, because in that you can choose your own operating system and kernel, and it is highly customizable. But with highly customizable, you also have the added responsibility of managing your services on your own. So that's this. Just long story short, it would depend upon the kind of use case people have. But with each of these models, the security responsibility also alters. So yeah.
Yeah, you did mention a couple of times about shared responsibility. It's both the responsibility of the organization and the cloud service provider to go ahead and take care of your data. And Vijay, in the beginning and also in between session, you did mention about encryption. That is how important it is. And I love that comment that you did it. So what specific data transmissions that are happening should be encrypted? I know APIs needs to be done, then HTTP requests should be done. What other kind of data should be encrypted? Uh, any suggestions on that?
Sure. So, just in short, any data that is either in transit or at rest should be encrypted. So, even if
Okay.
you have data that you're storing, you should not take it for granted. Even if it is something like a storage bucket that you're not going to access in the next 10 years, you still need to have the data secure. There are policies around that. So, even that data, any data you're storing or any data that is moving through your application needs to be encrypted in the best way possible. So,
Okay,
just, yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I mean, usually people would just, if they have a hot storage and a cold storage, they would really worry about the data that's in hot storage. They would take care of it. But I think even the data that is not in used, that's not volatile, they should also take care of it. So Vijay, there's so much to go ahead and take care, and this is perfect. I kind of messed with the background. There's so much to consider about the cloud securities, right? And it may be very challenging to go ahead, and while the application is in development, into the production, it may be very challenging to have a look at it. So is there any tool or something that this cloud service provider provide to go ahead and monitor on how well is your application working on security basis, or is there any matrices they provide, anything like that?
Yeah, so each cloud provider has something different. Like because I'm well
Hmm.
acquainted with GCP, so they have
Hmm.
monitoring system. Like you can have monitoring dashboards in that you can see if there is anything suspicious or anything that seems out of place. So that helps
Hmm.
you get the assess the overall health of not only your applications but also the security breaches that might happen or that's
Hmm.
about to happen. So each every organization so every cloud provider has a different one, so definitely they
Yeah.
have a lot of tools and services and making use of monitoring and alerting dashboards. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you might not be vigilant 24/7, but then you have an alert that's popping up which makes you realize that something is out of place, so that is extremely important.
Yeah, monitoring is something that I think organizations are using a lot, and it has grown. It has grown very mature, and yeah, I think monitoring is something people should look. So quick one last question. This is out of my curiosity, right? So
Yeah.
everyone's talking about that. Hey, blockchain is gonna help make your system better. It's gonna look at your transactions and make it more secure. So do you think blockchain will anyway in the near future or maybe in 10-15 years help this cloud security in any way to help their transactions or something? Do you think that will happen?
That's a very loaded question.
You know,
So yeah, I think it completely depends upon how well it evolves.
mhm,
So
mhm, yeah,
because yeah, both of these spaces are extremely vulnerable, like I mentioned. So even the cloud provider, it's a public cloud provider. So always give the simple analogy. Think of it like a rental house. So at the same time, you are occupying that house. When you move out, someone else occupies that house, or it can be even a more shared space where public cloud providers let two people stay inside a PG or a hostel, for example. So it is
hmm,
an open space, you have your own space which you need to secure. So and similarly when we talk about blockchain, it has its own security concerns, but at the
yeah,
same time yeah, like I said, we just need to see how it evolves. It's a very loaded question for me to answer in yes or no
yeah,
right now, so but
yeah.
a very
I'm just
interesting topic. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just really curious because people a lot these days do a lot of like forums, councils where they talk about how a blockchain is going to help in cloud securities, your transactions, and everything all that. And also we see Bitcoin going above 55, which is not blockchain. I know, just an example for blockchain, but that was pretty great session, Vijay. Thank you so much. We really
Okay.
enjoyed it. We're gonna put it on archive it so that people can come back and watch it. Any last thing you want to go ahead and say before we just wrap it up? I see I'm gonna put your clouddemystify.com so that
Okay.
everyone can go ahead and see that. Any last word you want to say before we close it?
So I want to know if there are any questions that people want to answer. Maybe I'll just give them a moment or two to absorb the entire presentation and ask if they have any questions.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've given the conclusion and the comments. So like I said, it is very important to understand the overall structure and the overall foundation of cloud before even going into cloud security. Like if you
Hmm.
don't know what a cloud provider is when it comes to public, private, or hybrid cloud providers, or even what the services are all about, so infrastructure or even blockchain as a service, which you talked about right now, which is also coming into the cloud. So
Hmm.
once we understand the entire model behind that, we have a strong foundation. It is only then that we can secure our data on the cloud. Just one note here, I've seen many people being apprehensive of the cloud. They keep telling me it's a shared space, so that means is it vulnerable to attacks? Is our data safe and secure? I just want to reiterate out there that nothing is secure in this. I mean, if you just look at the broader scheme of things, whether it is cloud or on premise. I've seen the kind of trouble that comes with on premise infrastructure as well. So sometimes even something as simple as, hey, the cable got stolen from the data center. I've heard that also happens. So it is it is crazy out there, but at the same time when it comes to cloud, you have the backing of the cloud provider, their experience, and everything that they have dealt with. But it's also shared responsibility. You cannot wash your hands off irrespective of the security model you choose. So just one note, not to be afraid of moving to the cloud just because of security concerns. They have a lot more policies and processes we can think about. They have compliance measures, like they have FedRAMP compliance, PCI compliance, just depending on the type of data you have on the cloud. So yes, that's just what I want to put. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great because Vijay, we recently moved from Rackspace to Azure. Like we moved the
Hmm.
entire C Sharp corner to Rackspace, and I'm gonna say it live, okay? So we got attacked. We got attacked. I think maybe Rackspace won't just help us. So we had tough time to go ahead and move to Azure. But yeah, we moved and everything to Azure. Early we were multi-cloud. We were somewhere on AWS, Google Cloud, and Rackspace. Now we moved everything on Azure, and it's all good. It's all smooth. runs everything well. They take care a lot of it. They have the very secure data centers. No one can just step in. So that's a cloud is a good space. Quick last question, Vijeta. If someone wants to go ahead and learn more about these cloud securities, what are the resources you would suggest to people to refer?
I have a lot of resources out there. So
Hmm.
I have mentioned them on my website as well. So if you go to clouddemystified.com and you click on cloud security, I have some resources. I can just copy paste it. No, actually, I don't have the resources here right now. I'm so sorry. But yeah, definitely going through any of the courses. Like I said, Coursera is a great place to do that. Or just going, all these cloud providers have great documentation as well. So they, if you go
Hmm.
on their website, you have documentation around security best practices and all the security tools and services available. So just depending upon the cloud provider, because everyone has a different security protocol, so
Hmm.
just it's better to just deep dive and then get an overview of what cloud security is all about. So definitely that would be really helpful, and if the users are interested, I can always write an article with all the resources that they would find helpful on cloud security on C Sharp, so they can leverage that as well.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. So thank you so much, Vijeta. That was amazing session. Thank you so much for your time. I, Stephen Simon, on behalf of entire C Sharp Corner, would like to thank you for all that you do for the community, and we would love to have you back when you're available. Maybe when you move back to India, that would be pretty exciting. We do these offline conferences in Delhi, so definitely you can move there too. So we would love to host you in those offline conferences too. So thank you so much, Vijeta, and thank you everyone who has joined. And we will
Thank
see you
you.
in the next episode of Ask Me Anything. All right, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thanks everyone. Bye bye.